Alright, so there's something I've been posting around Twitter lately, and a little fine detail. Um, the guy from 2 days ago who did the really bad thing that no one should do. Yeah, he may have been quote unquote a registered Republican. What that tells me is Pennsylvania has closed primaries. It doesn't tell me jack. What does tell me more is the fact that while he was supposedly unemployed, he donated $15. Um, as someone who's been unemployed quite a bit in his past, I'll tell you a secret about $15. $15 is ramen for a week, bottled water, and like Vienna sausages and spam and stuff. Like, you get what I'm saying. You go to Dollar Tree with $15. You don't give it to a political donation unless you're in the same lane as that. Number one. Number two. Even if this kid was straight up a Republican out of rebellion, but then switched sides, there's a study, I forget who did it, about people who do that with religion, and it was done back during the whole Islam thing, when we were really in the sandbox and really like urinating in people's cereal kind of thing in the sandbox. And no, I didn't serve in the military. I just have family members, so if this offends a vet somewhere, I'm not trying to. Or active duty. But, like, when a white Christian person would convert to Islam, they would go, like, instantly to, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, they'd go to 20 kind of thing. It's the same thing with Christianity, too, by the way. As a Christian, I can actually say this stuff. I mean, a lot of my content doesn't come off as Christian, and the fact that I'm wearing a Punisher shirt doesn't come off as Christian, but I think there are some things that Frank Castle's right on. I think there are, but I think a lot of the stuff that he does is wrong, and, you know, I think he's a good character to study for certain reasons, and a lot of the characters that surround him are a good study in fictional character ideology, just in general, because of, you know, they're pretty cool, actually. I'm not going to get into that, but what I am going to get into today is kind of a topic that the left is going to hate, and they're going to have to deal with it. They want to sit here and say that Trump saying fight, fight, fight is a problem. Okay. Well, you know what else is a problem? Calling people an existential threat. Here we go. I'm using footage from Sky News Australia. Sadly enough, their news is more accurate than just about anything we get here in the U.S., and they're not even stationed here in the U.S. So, this is going to be a React video. I don't usually do this kind of thing. I'm not too well versed in React content. But I did pre-watch this. I did pre-watch it. So this is not really like a raw React, kind of like what Asman does. This is just me bringing some facts to the table. Alright? So, let's get into it.
United States, and Democrats and many journalists have demonised Trump for years, of course. As I've been saying, they've consistently ratcheted up their rhetoric, especially as November's election looms.
Okay.
He's running against
he pulls up this clip, which is mostly news media figures, right?
Donald Trump
I agree.
is a plague
but
on the American conscience.
But I do believe that this particular clip better embodies what he's trying to say. Because this is also people on the left. This is Maxine Waters out of California. She's a Democrat representative. She's probably about the most sinister woman in Congress and like the entirety of that particular Capitol building. All right, here we go.
Go and take Trump out tonight. Take him out now.
When was the last time
An actor
The
assassinated the
lady
president.
before was
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Please get up in the face of some Congress people.
People will do what they do.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price.
Trumpers, be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them pay.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be? Does one of us have to come out alive?
Then punch him in the face.
That I thought he should have punched him in the face.
Feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school.
If we were in high school, I'd take you behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym.
That have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist? You're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs? Fuck you. War.
Okay, I don't know what that last guy is. It's probably just someone being cute with it, but you get the point, right? All right, back to what Sky News was saying, because we got more.
And the American nation.
Donald Trump is an existential threat that to whom the antidote is Joe Biden.
I think that Donald Trump is the most grave threat that we will face to our democracy in our
Man,
lifetime.
lady, spit it out.
We have to make the case Donald Trump does continue to pose an existential threat to our democracy.
Trump is an existential, urgent threat to our democracy.
I gotta pause this for a minute. You notice that phrase "existential threat" is constantly like on repeat. Tell me you ain't whistling for dogs. Tell me you ain't whistling for dogs.
Not be president again. He's an existential threat
look at
to
that.
democracy. We got to focus on the greatest threat to American democracy that we have ever seen, and that is in Donald Trump.
Now, obviously, the person who carries the blame for the attempted assassination.
Oh yeah,
of Donald Trump is
100%.
the governor. But
The
as I
shooter.
talked to Kristen Tate,
Sorry, I
there's
can't
been
say
a
that word on
vitriolic
YouTube
environment
because they are
created with Trump on the end
oversensitive.
of an unprecedented level
The
of
guy who
hatred
did the bad
from
thing, yeah,
political
100% blame on him.
Yes, the ruling class and
But-
the ilk and the corporate media have a seething hatred of Donald Trump because he single-handedly exposed the swamp as a cabal of unaccountable, power-hungry elites. And more ordinary Americans, Chris, are starting to think in some way or form that the government and the media are indirectly responsible for this assassination attempt.
Indirectly responsible?
Years that Donald Trump and his supporters
All right,
are
gotta pause her for a minute. This I gotta look up. And I'm gonna do it with you guys right here. Crap, how do you spell statute? Here we go. 18 U.S. Code, Statute 373. Solicitation to commit a crime of violence. Okay. Let's go. Let's fucking go. I'm gonna make this big. And I'm gonna make it large, like real large. I'm gonna take myself out of, well, you know, get myself out from covering it. If you guys want to read it, I'm not going to bother. Well, I am going to bother a little bit, but Section A. Whoever with intent that another person engage in conduct constituting a felony that as an element the use, attempted use, or threatened use of physical force against property and against the person of another in violation with the laws of the United States and under circumstances strongly corroborative. Yeah, this is all legal speak, but basically if you directly command, corroborate, intent, solicit, induce, or otherwise endeavor another person to commit some sort of physical violence that's in violation of U.S. law, you are guilty of solicitation to commit a crime of violence. So it says the word intent. I'm going to pull myself back up so you guys can actually see my face here. So you can see that I'm actually thinking on this one a little bit. Alright. Here's the thing. I've been, as a child, I was bounced in and out of the court system because my parents were, divorcees, the usual stuff. Here's the thing. The phrase existential threat, the word threat, okay? It doesn't matter if you say to our democracy, to our constitutional republic, or to my ham sandwich. When you say existential threat, you are branding someone as akin to a traitor. Akin to something that needs to be handled with violence. That is what you are saying. You are calling for violence. Period. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care where you are. In fact, we'll take this a step further. 2 seconds. Because I can't spell, I have to use, a search engine, but here we go. Britannica Dictionary, the meaning of existential. Let's use pop culture by dictionary.com. Let's go. Existential threat. Something is generally considered an existential threat when it is massive in scale, such as climate change or nuclear warfare. An existential threat can be a threat of something that isn't actually alive, such as a business or technology. Now, you could sit here and try to argue parlance of philosophical sense. But here's the deal. If you're comparing Donald Trump to nuclear warfare and things of that realm, buddy, you got it twisted. Number one. But number two, you're doing that on purpose. You're saying that because you're hoping someone comes along and deals with your problem for you. That is what that is. Let's call it what it is.
Nazis. On July 8th, 2024, President Joe Biden said, "We are done talking about the debate. It is time to put Trump in a bullseye." They tried to keep
Yes,
Trump
he did
off the
actually
ballot.
say
They
that,
tried
and
to
it was in a
slander
private
him and
call.
his family. They tried to take his properties away from him. They tried to throw him in jail on bogus charges. None of it worked, and he only got stronger. So what is the next step? Assassination.
Yeah, I have to repeat again, the person to blame here, of course, is the shooter. But
no, you don't have to repeat it because we already know it. But there is a reality here. The death that happened. God rest his soul. I did my research. Condolences to the family, thoughts and prayers. I wish I could do more, but probably the best thing I can do is make this video and call this stuff out, because I don't care what side of the aisle. This kind of talk needs to stop. Okay. And this is absolutely 100%. This video is not directed at Sky News. It's not a critique of their work. It's a critique of every politician worldwide. Worldwide. Okay. When you make words like existential threat commonplace about your opponent, you have sown the wind and you reap the whirlwind when people like me and Sky News come along with the clips of you saying this stuff after violence has happened. Okay? This is, while the act itself the guy who did it is 100% responsible. You are equally culpable for creating the environment that caused this.
Everybody involved in the political debate is responsible for the tone and the level of hatred, and some of the language around this has been irresponsible, and it creates a horrible environment. And even since the assassination...
I gotta stop him again. At some point we will get through this 6 minute and 57 second video. Stop him right there. There's little rule when it comes to homicide in the U.S., and I think it applies to a lot of other crimes too. Number one, you have accessory to, right? You're accessory to, let's say murder. Let's use the legal statute for murder, right? You could be charged with accessory to murder without even knowing that you had taken part. There are several methods of killing people that involve hands-off approaches, that involve the use of other people. Now, whether a judge charges that, whether a prosecutor charges that or not, that's kind of up to them. But yes, it can happen. Here's an example. This actually kind of applies. Let's do this from the left instead of the right. I usually do my videos from the right, but little thought experiment for you. You go up to a crowd of white people. Alright? You yourself are in fact white. Alright? But there's a group of black people across the way there, right? You know, good guys, normal people, you know, just chilling out. Maybe they're on the street eating a hot dog and talking about the game or whatever, you know, just normal day, right? Alright. You go up between these two groups as a white individual and you start saying stuff like white power, and, you know, maybe you mean it, maybe you don't, right? Maybe you're just there to start some shit. Alright. And I have to emphasize, this is hypothetical. Any connection to any real life event is not my responsibility. There is, like, no intention here for that. This is all hypothetical, right? So let's say these two groups start fighting, but somebody dies. Now, you had the right to free speech to say what you said. Sure, okay. But now you got to take responsibility for that body. Because your speech going into the two groups of people like that and saying that, you caused an incident. You are literally the cause of an accident. It's like walking down the center of the highway, opposing traffic, and watching the cars smash into other vehicles trying to avoid you. That is what you did. That is the equivalent of what you did. And you absolutely will be held responsible for it if they can prove that you did it. Intent or not doesn't matter. Your intent does not matter in that situation. What that is qualified as is provoking an incident or incitement of violence. And whether you intended to do it or not is kind of irrelevant when it gets to a certain level. When you've caused enough damage or you cause a big enough of an event, it's no longer just about the courts, right? We all see what CNN, Biden, Maxine Waters, Elizabeth Warren, we all see these faces. We're not stupid. We watch the news. In my case, I watch the news, and then I go watch what the other side says, and then I go watch what the other, what the commenters, I go through and I read some of their opinions, and I kind of try to amorphize my own sort of opinion about, like, what's going on. That's why I can tell you for a fact that the guy who did this is not a Republican. It's plain as day. Here's the deal. Every one of you on the left in the mainstream media, you have a share of responsibility for this. almost equal to that of the guy who pulled the trigger. Not quite, but almost, because you literally created the environment that created this that caused this to happen. You literally created it. Every single one of you did. It'd be no different than if a KKK member went out on stage and said, this group of people is an existential threat. Surprise, surprise, there's a wacko in the crowd who does something stupid. It's the same principle. It is the same principle. Yeah. And yes, I am using examples that the left likes to use when they talk about the right in this case, mostly because they don't like to admit the fact that there have been historically very close ties, and in some cases direct foundings between the Democrat Party, slave owners, the KKK, and other white supremacist groups, and they would like to try to forget about that, but I will not let them forget about that. I figured I'd put it in language they'd understand, if you catch my drift. So anyway, what do you think's going to happen to the guy that got up on that stage and called that group of people an existential threat? That's going to be up to the judge, I guess. Well, right now, the judge is the American people, and to which I am one of. And you can say what you want. Oh, you're voting for Trump, you're a MAGA Republican, blah, blah, blah. I'm voting for Trump because of his policies, not because of the person. I make memes and pair him up with anime pictures of, like, All Might with the fist in the air thing because of his person. I vote for him because of his policy. Alright? So you can kind of put that in your pipe and smoke it. You people, on the other hand, have spent the last 8+ years attacking him as a person and vilifying and demonizing him and anyone who votes for him. What do you think is going to happen? Because you guys have been calling this stuff publicly. And we see it as part of this news article that we're supposed to be reacting to, but I figured I'd put in my 2 cents before we get too far in. You people have been calling people on the right Nazis. Well, my family was in World War II back when World War II was out. We have a specific way to deal with Nazis back then. And we all know what it is. Alright? For people like me, a Nazi is something worthy of a bullet. Okay? And that's not like calling for violence against like Aryans or the whatever. No. I'm saying old-fashioned World War II Nazis, the same thing that you guys are calling us. My family that fought in World War II. I'm not going to dox my family because I want respect for their gravesite, and you assholes online, you fuckwits, you people don't even know the meaning of the word respect if it fucking hit you upside the head. And I'm not even, no, that ain't worth it. But I will tell you this, there's at least been anywhere from 3 to 4 members of my family from that generation served in World War II. What do you think they did? It was one of 2 things. The Pacific Theater or the European Theater. Alright? So think about that for a minute. One of whom actually only served as what was our great grandfather, cook or something like that in the military? I'm pretty sure he said he worked the mess hall at one point, and there was some story about killing a snake and eating it or something like that. A giant snake that fed the mess hall boys for a hot second. Yes, he was. Anyway, family stories aside. You people on the left, and there are some of you on the right, I'd concede that point a little bit, but it's majority on the left. You guys got to ratchet down your rhetoric real quick. Okay? number one, we already have clips of you calling us threats to the country and calling us Nazis and everything else. Anyone that doesn't vote for Biden, you basically called a Nazi. You people are disgusting. How do people vote for you? How do people see you even as human? You're subhuman. You're so bound up in your own political machine that you're dehumanizing an entire swath of the American population, to the point that one of your own guys, and we all know he was a Democrat because of who his parents are, number one, his donation history, number two, and number three, the fact that Pennsylvania has closed primaries, and there were Democrats voting in those Republican primaries in Pennsylvania that were voting for Nikki Haley, and you have to register as a Republican to vote in that fucking primary. It's a lot easier to register to vote than it is to give up that $15 worth of food when you ain't got a job. Think about that for a minute. Registering to vote doesn't cost you a red cent. Making a political donation to a party does. And that's all I'm going to say on that matter. But I will humor you and say, what if he was a Republican? Okay, well, what if he was a Republican transitioning to a Democrat platform, but he's mentally unstable? Now, I will say this. I'll say this. All right. I've seen the news footage about the interviews with his fellow students. He was heavily bullied. Okay? You have a heavily bullied individual who spends a lot of time alone, who's basically the butt of the whole school's jokes, who's highly intelligent. Okay? Those are the 4 takeaways. Let me tell you what I see. Number one, I look in that mirror. I see myself. Right? Here's what I know from my personal experience, that being alone, not having friends, not hanging out with people, and being super smart, that's a hallmark of autism. That means that you have trouble associating with people in the social construct. That means that you have trouble being out there and being able to function in a social environment. Those are pretty autistic traits. But not just autism, there's like 6 other conditions at a minimum that have similar attributes, right? But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this poor kid. And I say this poor kid, I mean like before he did this, right? I'm thinking back and I'm remembering my years in high school. My what do you want to call him? He wasn't the headmaster, the principal. Let's call him the principal of my high school. I moved around a lot as a kid. One of the disadvantages to living the way that I did is when you make friends, that you know you're not going to stick around, so you know you're going to bounce. So it's just better to keep your mouth shut and keep your head down, right? Well, that takes a toll. Now, in my case, it was I did it to myself because like I knew getting attached was like, it was just a way to get hurt, right? In this kid's case, I don't know his family history, right? So I don't know, like, is he a lifelong person who's lived there? I'm going to... there's nothing I have to back this up, but I'm going to assume that's the case, alright? Typically in that case, if that's what's going on, it's not because he chose it. I'm going to say that. I will say that. Very few times is it because the person chose to live that way. It's more likely that he just rubbed people the wrong way. Maybe people just didn't like him. And you know, that intelligence can play into that. Because like if you know everything, or if you know a lot, right? If you're really educationally like book smart, and you're talking to people and they say something that's wrong and you correct them all the time, you can alienate a whole group of people by doing that. And as a kid, as a teenager, sometimes that just doesn't even enter into the equation because you're just not thinking, you know. You talk without thinking. It's what kids do. I'm not trying to show sympathy for this guy. Like, what he did was fucking terrible. but I'm trying to explain to people a little bit, like, how does this person go to that point? You spend that much time alone and in the dark, any political ideology is bad, right? Like, that's how you brainwash somebody. It's how you brainwash somebody in public. You drop them in front of Twitter, you isolate them from everyone else, you drop them in front of Reddit, you isolate them from anyone else. And by the way, this can happen on the right too. You drop him in front of Truth Social after he's been isolated for a couple of years without having any friends, anyone to hang out to, and it's all that he sees, and there's someone on any of those platforms calling the other person an existential threat, he's going to think that's real. Now, us normal folks, and people like me who've been isolated like that, we've been through situations like this. We know the effects that this stuff can have. It's kind of blatantly obvious. A lot of psychiatric professionals could actually validate what I'm saying here, because this is where I got my information from, was actually going to see these people. When you isolate like that, people are social. Humans are very social by nature, right? So when you isolate someone like that, you put them in a very bad place mentally. Like, even without the bullying, right? Isolation, there's a reason in prison isolation is like the worst thing they can do to you without putting you on for a death sentence, right? Because that isolation cell, and JD DeLay could get on, he could use me as a react content if he wanted to, and he could absolutely tell you that it is possibly the worst thing you can do to a human being. And you know what? Yeah, that isolation chamber is like 1,000,000 times worse than what happens in high school, but to a point, when you're a kid, that isolation can be very bad. Very bad. There's an old saying, idle hands are a devil's plaything, right? If that kid ain't busy having fun with his friends, that brain could go anywhere, and some of the places it can go are very dark. I mean, darker than my friggin' shirt dark. So, that's just throwing that out there. I'm not going to elaborate more, but that goes to mental illness. That goes to socially induced mental illness. And before you say, well, what about the fact that most people are normal? Well, most people have friends. Most people are, pretty well supported in their friend group structure. If this kid was bullied on top of that, you're going to put him in front of Reddit, Twitter, Truth Social, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook. You're basically giving up this kid to the hands of the devil and the world and telling them to roll the dice on which way he's going to go. That's not good. That's no good. Alright, let's get back to the news footage. We got to get this over with.
There have been some journalists in the US and even in Australia sort of flippantly joking that they wish there was a better aim from the shooter. It's just unthinkable, the sort of...
Any person, left or right, I don't care. Political ideology has nothing to do with it. If you're doing this, you are actively wishing harm upon someone else. Bar none. You're disgusting and a disgrace. Resign, quit your job, go seek help. You're disgusting.
Yet after 3 goes at making a statement to the nation on the back of this attempted assassination, the president for the 3rd time had a crack at it today, our time, and he asked people to tone it down. Have a look.
You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Okay. Love that. That's kind of ironic, isn't it? Isn't that just something else coming from the same guy who said this?
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans quote a clear and present danger to our democracy. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. We've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it. Each and every one of us. We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. We must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power. The MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail.
Okay, here we go. May God rest my soul for what I'm about to say. The man who was shot and killed at the rally the day before yesterday, yeah, that's that loving father and husband that your little boy there just fucking offed. I'm gonna burst your little bubble here. He saw that kid probably saw this video and decided that he had the power to take action, Mr. Biden. And yes, I am directly addressing the current sitting United States president. You are a liar and a hypocrite. Your careless rhetoric is what caused this event to happen. You found a mentally unstable kid unintentionally, but you were bound to by doing such a public vitriolic statement as this. You're bound to find someone. Get them all primed up, lube them up, and get ready to shove it up somewhere for the right side, not in a friendly way, not in the way that's supposed to be done, not in the way that it's been done politically in the past. Oh no, you sir set this kid up with words like that, because that's exactly what this kid heard. Now, we'll go back. I gonna give Sky News its time. Don't you worry about that. None. They'll get their time. But we need to have a word here. So tell me something. You're gonna sit here and tell us that we live in shadows and lies. You're gonna say stuff like that to your own base. And eventually you're gonna realize that there are parts of your base that are mentally cracked. And they're going to go off and do stuff like this. And, just as kind of an FYI, I brought the receipts. Here's your boy. Not employed. $15 unemployed. Like I said before, that's, you go to Dollar Tree and get food with that money. You don't spend it on earmarked for Progressive Turnout Project. Reported on Form 3X Online 11A1. Recipient information. Act Blue. Would you look at that? Okay. If this guy were a registered Republican, he wouldn't be donating a red cent if he was straight up a legit Republican to Act Blue. I know registered Republicans that are centrists who want Act Blue banned. Like, outright banned. This does not happen in the real world. This happens with someone who wants to donate to the political party they believe in, and then they go off and register as a Republican to vote in a Republican primary to try to get someone that ain't Donald Trump. This is what we call Trump derangement syndrome. Alright, this is probably the most aggressive case of this ever seen.
Tone it down from the president, but to me, Christian, this is still not enough. He has to accept that his own side of politics, sure, he can say the Republicans and the Trump supporters have been too extreme at times as well, but he needs to accept the responsibility himself, and that the Democrats and their supporters have injected too much hatred and toxicity into the political debate.
Yes, I mean, the left has encouraged for years now a culture of hatred and at times violence against conservatives. Years ago, former Attorney General Eric Holder said of conservatives, when they go low, we kick them. Maxine Waters told her supporters to go into restaurants and other public places and shout out Trump administration officials. And
these are not just talking points, these are historical facts.
Their political opponents in the streets of Portland with crowbars. BLM tortured the streets with impunity in America for months. In 2017, Steve Scalise, a Republican, was shot at a congressional.
Yeah, that happened too. That was terrible.
Their own base of voters devolve into a mob of angry, violent criminals in many cases, and there is no effort on the left that I've seen.
No, there isn't. That's another thing too. Like, the current sitting president coming out calling for nonviolence after spending the last 8 years effectively inciting violence. That don't count for nothing. That's a joke. That is a joke. Even a broken clock's twice a day kind of joke.
A spotlight on that. We all want to de-escalate the rhetoric. We all want peace.
Yeah, yo, don't get me twisted. Don't get me twisted here. No one wants violence. Like, I've said it in previous videos, dude. We just want to be left alone. That's why I'm voting for Trump. I don't want my taxes to constantly be so high that I can't afford to eat. I don't want to keep paying like $5 to $10 for a jug of milk. And just saying, it's not because, I mean, yeah, sure, Joe Biden has a skeleton. So does every politician and rich person in the United States and probably even the world. But the reality of the matter is that I'm not going to sit here and say that Joe Biden is literally Satan. All right? He might very well be, but if that's the case, gee, it's no wonder God's inevitably gonna win. Sorry, that was in poor taste. I'm sitting here trying to call for a tone down in rhetoric, and I literally just poked the bear with a red hot friggin' branding iron, basically. All right. Jokes aside, that was to anyone on the left who sees this, that was a joke. That was a joke. Trying to lighten the mood a little bit, but this is a very serious topic. If people want to sit here and say that Trump is this terrible person because he calls for violence when he pumps his fist and says fight, fight, fight. You know who else does that? UFC, WWE. Me when I'm playing Call of Duty sometimes. I don't play Call of Duty that often. I'm more into the First Descendant now, actually. Real fun game. Nexon knew what they were doing. But, you know, we need... I think I tagged it best the other day when I said, we need more turkey dinners. And less political rhetoric at the dinner table. Alright? And straight up, talk about what you want to talk about, right? Like politics, whatever. But when it comes to kids, when it comes to these people, it needs to be reinforced that politics is like wrestling. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't need it in electoral college. Your popular vote matters to make you feel good about yourself, matters to make you feel good about voting for someone. Also, it operates as a good comparative mechanism, because like if the popular vote in some places like off kilter compared to how the electoral college voted, then people can kind of look at the electors at that point and be like, kind of tilt their head and start to wonder whether this person is legit doing the job or if they're been bought and paid for, kind of thing. Anyway, I'm not saying that's ever been done, because I have to say that, right? Anyway, look, I'm calling y'all out, alright? And I think it's high time every other creator... I'm not much of a creator, I'm like 0 on a creator scale, but if anyone major catches this, I think y'all need to call the politicians, the news, everyone out, right? We need turkey dinners, not fighting in our streets. And you guys ratcheting this stuff up over the last 8 years, you brought us fighting in the streets. When all we wanted to do was cook our turkey and eat our mashed potatoes. Yep. You did that. Like, at this point, it's kind of like an Xbox achievement. You don't want to admit that you did something inappropriate in a video game, but there's an achievement for it, and you can't hide from it. The only way to hide from it is to disappear. Okay? And yeah, that's using the Xbox example, by the way. Anyway, moving on, we're going to keep watching this. We're going to finish up the last 2 minutes and like 37 seconds of this, and we're going to...
The hatred to stop, but we're not seeing that fall from our leaders right now, and it's tragic.
Yet we've seen from Joe Biden and through him from the First Lady Jill Biden some level of personal respect afforded to Donald Trump. Have a look.
Last night...
This is for political expedience only. Believe me when I tell you this. This is the kind of people that politicians are, and this goes on both sides, right? If this had gone the other way, and that bullet didn't miss, you'd have him come out here and say, well, it sure is a tragedy about what happened, but now we need to figure out who my next opponent is going to be. That's exactly what's going to happen. He'd literally write this off and take the win home to the bank and probably smile as he did it. That is not just him. That is every politician. These people regard human lives with the same regard I have for the dirt on the bottom of my feet. They don't. And before anyone gets on here and says, that's some pretty harsh rhetoric, remember the Afghanistan withdrawal? All the lives that were lost and the equipment that was lost as a account of that? All the entirety of our reputation internationally going down the fucking toilet? Yeah, Biden did that and didn't have a second thought about it. So, maybe remember who we're talking about here.
I spoke with Donald Trump.
Alright, I gotta mute my mic, guys. Hang on.
There's been some speculation that these events of the last 48 hours mean that he's a lock now to stay in and contest for a second term, that it changes everything. Whereas I've got to say, I see it a little bit differently. I think the volatility of the last 48 hours guarantees that we'll see more volatility, and perhaps the only way to break this cycle for the...
I'm going to stop. The bald guy here, I don't know his name. Here's the thing about American politics, and this the reason he said this is because he lives in Australia. He doesn't know U.S. politics the way that we do here in the U.S. The left will burn a building down. The right, you'll shove a lead pipe with razor blades up their backsides, and they'll sit there and take it. They won't do a damn thing. That's the political paradigm. That's not like calling one side bad worse than the other, because like I'm gonna be truthful, okay? The reason y'all are divided left to right is because you're easier to control. If y'all got together, if you had the Republican ideology and the left's willingness to do stuff about it, y'all would be unstoppable. Just throwing that out there. But you'll never see that. It just won't happen. Oh, I should point out that the kid's dad was a libertarian. Yeah, the meme party. I did not say mean. I said meme, as in the internet joke party, basically. The people that would just assume run naked down your street because they're absolutely friggin' bonkers.
Democrats will be for them to, whether it's now or at the convention in just over a month from now, actually find a new candidate for this election. What are your thoughts?
I could not agree with you more, Chris. The events over the last 24 hours were absolutely tragic. They were horrific, but politically speaking, they are very beneficial to Donald Trump. I am getting calls and texts from people I haven't heard from in over a decade. Liberals, Democrats, independents telling me that they respect Donald Trump's strength in that moment. Some of them have said, I'm even going to vote for Donald Trump now. What he did was inspiring. That was an iconic image, seeing him raise his fist like that after being shot and telling Americans to fight for their country. So the left,
So, yesterday, I got inspired. I'm going to see if I can find it. I done got creative with Microsoft Paint. When people say strength, this is what they mean. They ain't just talking about the fact that he took a bullet to the ear, which is, by the way, the ear is part of your head, so he can officially say he'd been shot in the head and survived. Which, Jake Tapper, gotta call you out for a minute. Just because a bullet hits your ear does not mean it's like trying to give you a wet willy. It can graze your ear by going past your head. The fact that, dude, you just made yourself a meme, man. You literally just made yourself a meme. You're sitting here thinking that Donald Trump is getting a wet willy by a bullet, when in fact it grazed his ear. It went right by his head. He turned his head at just the right moment, and it clipped the top of his ear. He has an ear piercing now. We can now say, when he gets the presidency in November, we'll be able to say that we had a president with an ear piercing. Too soon. Too soon. I realize that was too soon, but I felt like it should be said.
they are more desperate than ever now to get Biden out of there. Will their tactics to replace him change? Of course they will. I think you will see a quieting of that public conversation over the next few weeks. We won't hear much about it, but you better believe behind closed doors they are talking about the best way to do that. And I tend to agree with you that it will probably happen at or around the convention. Joe Biden will probably get up there and graciously say that he is willingly stepping down for the good of the country, for his family, for his health, to focus on those things, and then the Democrats can quietly usher in their preferred candidate.
Fascinating times. Thanks.
Okay,
so
that again is from someone.
Thank you so much.
These are just the goodbyes and all that stuff. That again is from someone who doesn't know how U.S. politics works. You'll have to forgive the thumping around. My dog got a hold of his bone. He's playing with it. So anyway, That was the Sky News Australia session. I figured I'd give my 2 cents and show you guys some stuff that kind of both reinforces and kind of rebuts a little bit of what they were saying, because some of it was kind of trying to take the middle road. I understand that they have to because they're a media organization. They can't call for, they can't do anything that even comes off as remotely questionable. But this is YouTube and Twitter we're talking about here. I can get on here and pretty much with a great deal of leniency by comparison to an Australian news service, I can get on here and say some things. And I can bring up receipts that they probably wouldn't want to on a live broadcast, because Australia does things different. They could lose their broadcasting license a lot easier than it happens over here in the US. But anyway, no, people need to stop getting stuff twisted. I'm not calling for violence, and nor will I ever in this situation. I'm actually trying to sit here and say we need to remove the violence from the equation entirely. Because like I said, the violence is the tool that people like the deep state are going to use to keep the left and the right away from each other, because they don't want y'all collaborating against them. That's what this is. This is the prison staff and the warden keeping y'all fighting amongst yourselves so they can run the prison according to how they want. You need to stop and realize that's what this stuff is. Alright? And we just had one of our inmates go wackadoo and try to whack a dude and failed and got the wrong person and got capped for it. That's what happened. Don't get it twisted. The feds are going to come out and say, oh, there's no proof that it was politically motivated. Dude showed up at a MAGA rally with a gun and a car full of explosives. Save me. Spare me from the BS. We know what this is. And this is not Democrats or the left as an entirety. This is a minority set that we're talking about here. These are people who, back in, the 60s and 70s, we'd have locked up in straitjackets in a fucking mental ward. But because we mainlined these people into society, and by the way, the right has them too, don't get me wrong. Look at your local tinfoil hat squad. A lot of them can be very conservative Republican. I also got to point out that a lot of your tinfoil hat guys most of the time don't get physically violent. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. Y'all don't get this twisted. I'm not calling for violence, never will in these situations, right? Violence is something that's reserved for stuff that is literally an existential threat, not politically an existential threat. And if they put the word politically existential threat into their conversations, people like this would probably put 2 and 2 together and realize, okay, they're just using rhetoric to say, if he gets elected, our agenda is done. Not our way of life, just our agenda. Because, by the way, whether the left wants to admit this or not, and by the way, the right during the Obama years did something very similar. Yeah, sure, we have to deal with the Obamacare BS now, but that's more or less been neutralized pretty much, except for the consequences of it draining our money that we don't have, basically. But, like, the bigger complaints that conservatives had, like it requiring health insurance, for example, those are done. The taxation stuff, that's garbage. That's in the garbage, right? So, generally speaking, we're back to American life. What's changed is the left after Donald Trump got elected president. That's what changed. The rest of us went about eating our turkey dinners. Y'all started bumping up the rhetoric about how Trump was Hitler. And then your base went insane. And then it slowly started to creep into the mainline Democrat angles. And then it started splitting up families and isolating people. That's what happened. You wanted a brief history lesson of what happened? There it is. Back when Trump was elected president, I was happier than shit. I went over to my ex-girlfriend's place, or her parents' place. They're Democrats, right? But we got along. All of a sudden, I wasn't quite so welcome. Alright? I didn't, like, rub it in their face or nothing, but, like, they knew my leanings and made it a point to let her know that I wasn't welcome. So, maybe y'all need to look in the mirror. Have your come to Jesus moment and realize that the last 8 years of political division in this country were you guys flipping your bird over the fact that a man got elected that you didn't like for 4 years. Would have just been a maximum of 8 years. There is no way for him to physically or legally get around not being president after that vote. June 20th. What is it? January 20th. Or is it 6th? Now, I got my J dates mixed up. Give me my J months mixed up. Give me a second. January 6th. It did not matter what that crowd did. It did not matter what Trump said. At the end of the day, the system said Joe Biden was president. And I said the system because you all know how I feel about that. Regardless of my feelings, that's what the system said. Okay? The system said Joe Biden got electoral votes making him the president. Alright? And we could have an argument about popular votes all the fuck we want. The reality is, there have been a lot of presidents lately winning on electoral votes ain't got popular votes. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And you people need to stop smelling the mess hall and the shower room and start looking at the state of the yard. Because the exercise equipment's everywhere. People have to pick up, weights from halfway across the yard covered in mud and blood. And it's all because you guys wanted to use your fancy words to try to demonize your opponent. To try to firm up your base. A base of people that, by the way, Democrats, generally speaking, they don't vote for people that ain't Democrats. The Republicans, generally speaking, they don't vote for people that ain't Republicans. Sitting here using these extreme words like that, like what's just been shown in this video, in this reaction. Y'all did it. Y'all did it. Own it. Own up to it. Say you made the mistake. Say it needs to stop and it won't happen again. But don't just say it. Act it. Don't let it happen again. If you have to make a law regarding incitement from political speech that even if it's just compensating financially the family out of your donation coffers, right, for your campaign, even if that's the price that has to be paid. Like, I'm not... look, I think calling for violence should absolutely land someone in a world of hurt, legally speaking. But if we're talking about presidential candidates and presidents and stuff like that, people who have immunity, I think we need to have a conversation about them having to take a massive financial hit to their donations when their words lead to stuff like this. Okay? Now, as to the other situations like the riots and stuff, that falls under this category too. Because if y'all weren't too busy dividing yourselves amongst each other based off of racial hatred that should have died out in the 70s and 80s, we wouldn't be having these conversations at all. But y'all did it to yourselves. You let them divide you. You let them play the hate monger game. And that goes for white, black, Mexican, Asian, don't matter. It's all of you. All of you. Y'all did it. Okay? And the reason I'm not including illegal aliens into that is because they already broke the law by entering the country without doing the paperwork. Sorry, but that's the way it is. I was born into this country, and my parents had to do my paperwork for me. That should tell you all you need to know. Think about that for a minute. Let that sink in. You don't get around doing the paperwork in this country. The only difference is, I was newly born. There was no need for a background check. You're coming in from a different country. You kind of need to be vetted because we need to know if you're going to start doing funny stuff with pool chemicals and fertilizer. Alright? And I don't encourage that kind of behavior, but the fact that it exists is why you have to be vetted. So at the end of the day, have whatever theories you want. The violence stops. Alright? And to my brothers on the right, to my friends on the right, my family on the right, keep the peace. Keep the peace. You step out of line, I think that we on the right need to police ourselves and we do so. We do good. Alright? I'll give you that. You do good. But you need to lead by example. This is one of those lead by example moments from, what was it? We Were Soldiers. Lead by example. You learn the job from the guy above you and you teach your job to the guy below you. Just because the left right now is in shambles because they had some brainwashing going on that caused a wackadoo to lose their stuff, then fine. We need to teach them how to police their own base, to make sure that they're doing mental health checkups on each other, make sure that they're being a caring enough community, and being all, hey, y'all right. That's what stops this. That's what prevents this in the future. 100%. You want to stop stuff like this. You want to stop these kind of crimes. Because sure, there are criminals out there who do it for the thrill of the crime. I'm not saying there ain't. I would argue that a good 50 to 75% of crimes are done out of desperation or some kind of issue. If y'all did what the Bible said, love thy neighbor as thyself, and did welfare checks on your neighbors on a daily basis, your classmates, your family members, I guarantee you crime rates in this country drop when that starts happening. Like a rock. Y'all want good political talking points? Best political talking point? You don't have to be a Christian. But be Christ-like. Check on your neighbor. Ask him if he's doing alright. You know your neighbor's going through a divorce. Maybe bring him a cup of coffee and some cookies or a biscuit. And say, hey, you want something to eat and something to drink and have a word? Because you look like you could use it. Alright? And hey, back when I was smoking, I don't recommend smoking, by the way, but back when I was having some rough times in my life, in college and whatnot, that was one of the best ways that people would get me to talk. I'd say, hey, let's go for a smoke. And then it was just like, because of who it was my shop teacher. He'd clear everyone out of the smoking area, and me and him would sit there and talk. That man kept me from going to prison. Just FYI, that man kept me from going to prison. I know I'm probably doxing someone when I say this, but Bobby Sewell, you saved me from going to jail. You took me out of a very dark place, and you know what I'm talking about. If you ever see this video, you know what I'm saying. Respect. I hope you're doing okay. And by the way, props to the lead of the Ozark division of Arkansas Technical University, the other person who pulled me out of a very bad place and told me to take a day. Alright, props. They know the situation. I ain't gonna go into it. This isn't Jared Story Hour. This is me expressing the fact that this stuff works. Checking on people works. Talking to them works. And hey, if they don't want to talk right now, it's fine. But tell them that you're there when they want to talk. If they want to get it off of their chest when they're ready, they'll do it. Alright? But just let them know that they have people they can talk to. That's the important thing. And like I said, man, it's absolutely free. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to do anything. Just walk up to somebody that you see having a hard time and ask them, hey man, what's up? Right? Like, and by the way, yeah, alright, that's kind of a dangerous piece of advice because of how society is, and you kind of have to be careful who you talk to, but like, even people like that, if you walk up to them and you say, hey man, you look like something's up. Is there some way that you can be helped, or can I help you somehow? Like, and don't do it with attitude. Like, don't go up there and say, can I help you? up there with a caring voice and tenor and say, hey man, you look like you're having an issue. Okay, is there something I can do to help? I guarantee you'll get a lot more accomplished with that attitude than demonizing your opponent and effectively inciting violence. But look, this is carried on for long enough. It was a very emotional appeal. I kind of went a little too far into the weeds with that one, but I hope everyone gets the point. I know I also repeated the hell out of myself a lot. It's also been up for 70 minutes, and I kind of dragged on 6 minutes and turned it into 70. Sorry about that, guys. But anyone catching this, just, we all need to step up. Alright? We all need to be better, left and right and center. And hopefully we can be that. But on that note, I think I'm gonna... It's literally 7 o'clock here. I haven't even had breakfast yet. But I felt like this